Okay, so you want to own a gym, find a space, fill it with equipment, watch the memberships roll in. Honestly, that's not a terrible plan. Walk into almost any gym at 6 in the evening on a Tuesday. And it looks like the safest business on the planet. Every treadmill occupied, a queue for the squat rack, front desk busy, parking lot full. You look at that and think, this place is printing money. More people means more memberships means more profit. Simple. Here's the thing nobody tells you. You are standing there at the single most misleading hour of the entire week. Because a gym is not a fitness business. A gym is a subscription business that happens to own dumbbells. And the second you understand that difference, every strange decision the fitness industry makes suddenly starts to make perfect sense. Let's start with what you're actually buying. Because there isn't one kind of gym, there are five, and each one is a completely different business, wearing the same gym shorts. At the bottom of the market, you have budget chains, $10 to $25 a month, buildings the size of a small supermarket, thousands of members, minimal staff, everything built around raw volume. One location like this can hold 5 to 8,000 members and still run with a skeleton crew on the floor. Above that sits the traditional commercial gym. Weight floor, cardio section, a few group classes, usually $30 to $60 a month. Then you have luxury health clubs, $150 a month or more. At that price, you're not really selling exercise. You're selling a lifestyle: spa, lounge, towel service, the full experience. Then boutique studios, small rooms, often under 3,000 square feet, built around exactly one style of training. They charge $100 to $200 a month or sell packs of individual classes. And finally, the smallest, most brutal category, the one-on-one personal training studio, sometimes 500 square feet. No memberships at all. You're selling a coach's time, nothing else. Each of these is a bet on the same underlying question. Do you want a huge number of people paying you a little, or a small number of people paying you a lot? That single choice decides every other number in this business. Here's a useful way to measure it. Traditional gyms generate $50 to $100 of revenue per square foot per year. Boutique studios pull $100 to $350 per square foot. Same industry, 3 times the revenue density, but boutique studios also have far fewer members to lose before the whole thing stops working. Now, let's talk about what it actually costs to unlock the front door, because this is where the naive plan starts falling apart. You think the expensive part is the equipment. It isn't. The expensive part is turning an empty commercial box into a room that can legally and safely hold sweating human beings. Start with the landlord. A commercial lease usually wants 3 to 6 months of rent up front as a security deposit before you've touched anything. Then the build out. Rubber flooring that can survive a dropped barbell without cracking the slab underneath. Locker rooms and showers need moisture-resistant materials, and drainage plumbing that a normal retail space simply does not have. Mirrors, floor to ceiling, professionally installed. And then the one almost nobody budgets correctly: air. A standard retail unit is not designed for 100 people, generating heat and moisture for hours at a stretch. You need industrial grade ventilation, and the amount of fresh air you're legally required to move is not a guess, it's a building code formula. Get that wrong, and you don't just have an uncomfortable gym. You have a failed inspection and a facility you cannot legally open. Add up the deposit, the renovation, the permits, the insurance, the opening marketing push, and a cash reserve to survive the slow months at the start. Depending on the model and the city, you're looking at $50,000 on the absolute low end for a tiny studio and $100,000 to $500,000 or more for a real commercial facility. Some larger builds run past $600,000 before a single member has signed anything. Now let's talk about equipment, because there's a trap here. The trap isn't the price, it's the decision. Do you buy the equipment outright or do you lease it? Buying feels responsible. You own it. It's an asset on your books, no monthly bill hanging over you. But buying drains your cash reserve at the exact moment you need cash the most, during those uncertain first months before membership stabilizes. And commercial equipment does not last forever. Heavy daily use destroys a machine in a way home use never does. Leasing sounds smarter. Small monthly payments, cash stays free. Swap the equipment every few years so it never looks dated. Here's the catch. Lease financing carries interest, which means across the full term you pay meaningfully more than the equipment was ever worth. And the lease does not care how your business is doing. If membership collapses and you close the doors, those payments follow you out of the building. Neither answer is wrong. But whichever you pick, you've just locked in a fixed monthly cost. That has to be paid whether 10 people walk in that day or 400. Now, location. This is where most first-time owners quietly ruin themselves before they open. They think a good location means somewhere with lots of people. It's far more specific than that. The single strongest predictor of whether a gym survives is member density inside roughly a 12-minute drive. Not the city, not the metro area, 12 minutes. That radius is your entire addressable market. And inside it, the income level has to match your pricing. A luxury club at $150 a month cannot survive in a neighborhood built on budget incomes, no matter how good your equipment is. Here's how serious this is. Roughly 80% of independent gyms that fail for two reasons: location mistakes and undercapitalization. Not bad training, not bad equipment, location and money. Now we get to the part that explains everything else about this industry: the membership itself. I want you to picture two people signing up on the same day. Person 1 shows up 3 times a week, every week, all year. Person 2 shows up twice in January, feels great about themselves, and never comes back, while continuing to pay every single month. Which one is more valuable to your gym? It's person 2, and it isn't close. Let's actually do the math on why. Person 1 uses hot water for showers. They wear down the treadmill belt. They need towels laundered. They take up floor space. During the exact hour your gym is most crowded, which can push other members toward canceling. Every visit costs you a small amount of real money and a small amount of real capacity. Person 2 costs you almost nothing. No water, no towel, no equipment wear, no crowding. Their monthly payment arrives like clockwork and flows almost entirely to your bottom line. Industry data consistently shows that a large majority of gym members rarely or never use the gym they're paying for. Read that again. A significant share of the revenue base of a typical budget gym comes from people who are not exercising there. This is not an accident or a scandal. It is structurally how the model works. Think about the physical building for a second. A gym with 6,000 members could never fit even a fifth of those people on the floor at once. Fire code wouldn't allow it. Equipment wouldn't support it. A typical gym floor might be legally capped at somewhere around 200 to 300 people at a time. If even 10% of a 7,000 member gym arrived simultaneously, you'd have 700 people trying to fit into a room built for maybe 250. You'd be in violation within minutes. So the gym isn't selling access to a room. It's selling a statistical bet that most members will never show up at the same time, and a large share of them won't show up at all. The building only needs to be big enough for the fraction who actually come, not the number who pay, which is why gyms do not secretly want every member to become a daily regular. A gym full of daily regulars would need a bigger building, more equipment, higher utility bills, to serve the exact same number of paying customers. The forgotten membership, the one quietly sitting on someone's bank statement, is one of the most profitable customers this industry has. Now, seasonality, because this shapes your entire financial calendar. A huge share of all annual gym signups happen in a single month, January. New Year's resolutions. Gyms lean into this hard. Discounted joining fees, cheap trial offers, advertising spend concentrated into a few weeks. That 1 month can hand you a large injection of cash and a wave of new monthly billing, but the wave goes out almost as fast as it comes in. Roughly half of all new members stop attending within 6 months. And of the people who join specifically as a resolution, the vast majority have stopped showing up by summer. February is the highest risk month of the entire year. That's the point where motivation dies, before a real habit has formed. Experienced owners don't panic about this. They build their entire cash flow plan around it, using the January surge to fund the quiet summer. The owners who get destroyed are the ones who spend that January money as though it represents a permanent new level of revenue. There's also a structural decision sitting underneath all of this. Build an independent gym or buy into a franchise? A franchise gives you a known brand, a proven layout, standardized software, and usually better equipment pricing through corporate purchasing. That has real value, especially for a first-time owner, but it isn't free. Franchise agreements typically require an upfront fee, then an ongoing royalty of 5 to 10% of gross revenue, paid every single month, plus an additional contribution into a shared national marketing fund. An independent owner keeps every dollar the business generates. A franchise owner permanently shares a slice of the top line in exchange for the brand and support system. That trade only works if the brand pulls in enough extra membership volume to cover what you're handing back every month. Now let's talk about psychology, because it matters as much as the spreadsheet here. Why do people keep paying for something they don't use? Part of it is optimism at the moment of signing. The membership feels like a promise to a future version of yourself. Part of it is what economists call a commitment device. Paying is supposed to be the thing that forces you to go. And part of it is pure inertia. Canceling means admitting the plan didn't work. For $20 or $30 a month, most people would rather quietly keep paying than have that conversation with themselves. The physical design of your gym reinforces this, whether members notice or not. Clean layouts with clear pathways reduce the intimidation a new member feels walking in, which keeps them coming long enough for a habit to either form or quietly fade. Mirrors near the strength area help people track progress, which builds motivation, but too many mirrors in a beginner zone can backfire and increase self consciousness instead. Lighting is deliberate too. Weight rooms often use harder directional light that creates visible muscle definition. Stretching and recovery zones use softer light to feel calmer. Even music tempo is chosen with intent because faster music helps people push through effort with less perceived difficulty. None of this is decoration. All of it aims at one target: keep the member emotionally attached to this gym for as long as possible, whether or not they're actually using it, which brings us to the uncomfortable part. Leaving a gym is almost never as easy as joining one. Many contracts require cancellation in writing, not by phone, not through an app, in person, or by certified mail with a return receipt. Contracts often require 30 to 60 days notice before the next billing cycle, which guarantees the gym collects at least one more month after you've already decided to leave. And failed payments, expired cards, declined transactions account for a meaningful share of all cancellations, which is exactly why gyms run entire teams dedicated to chasing down failed payments. Before a member drifts away, regulators have noticed there has been sustained pressure in recent years to require that canceling a subscription be as easy as signing up for one, with several jurisdictions introducing their own local rules and real financial penalties for gyms that make cancellation deliberately painful. Keep that in mind because it tells you something important about this business. If a gym's survival genuinely depended on happy, engaged, frequently attending members, it would not need to make leaving this difficult. The existence of cancellation friction as a core operational discipline tells you the industry already knows a large share of its revenue comes from people who wish they weren't paying. Before we get to the numbers, there's a category of hidden cost that blindsides almost every first-time owner. Music. Playing music in a commercial space is not the same as playing it at home. Any business playing music for customers is legally required to hold a public performance license, and there isn't one organization to pay. There are several performing rights organizations, each representing different songwriters and publishers, and a gym typically needs licenses from more than one at the same time. Skip this, and the risk is not small. These organizations send investigators into gyms, bars, and shops, specifically checking for unlicensed music. Statutory damages for copyright infringement run into the thousands of dollars per song and dramatically higher if a court decides it was willful. A gym owner who assumes a personal streaming subscription is good enough for the sound system has quietly taken on legal exposure, worth far more than the license would ever have cost. That's a small example, but it points at the bigger lesson of this entire business. Almost none of the real costs are the ones printed in an equipment catalog. They're buried in a licensing agreement, a lease clause, or a maintenance contract nobody read carefully until something broke. And plenty of things break. Heavy daily use wears down treadmill belts, cable machines, and upholstery far faster than home use ever would. Mid-sized gyms typically budget somewhere between $1,000 and $3,000 a month, purely for ongoing repair and replacement. Utility bills for a facility running constant ventilation, bright lighting, and hot water for showers can run between $1,000 and $6,000 a month. None of these numbers are dramatic alone. Stacked together, month after month, they quietly consume the exact margin you were counting on. Now let's talk about whether this model actually holds at scale, because history says not always. Consider Bally Total Fitness. At its peak, it was the largest health club chain in the United States, built on aggressive long-term membership contracts, often financed over several years, like a car loan. On paper, the model looked brilliant. Lock members into years of guaranteed payments, and you've secured revenue in advance. So how does the biggest fitness chain in the country end up filing for bankruptcy twice within a single year? The answer isn't that people stopped wanting to exercise. The answer is structural. Aggressive sales tactics and long-term financing contracts triggered consumer protection lawsuits and accounting investigations. The company had built an empire on debt and contractual promises, rather than genuine, sustainable member value. When the legal and financial pressure arrived, the structure gave way. Bally filed in 2007, filed again in 2008, and was sold off piece by piece. A similar story played out with 24-Hour Fitness, once one of the largest chains in the country. It didn't collapse because people stopped exercising. It collapsed because it carried too much debt relative to actual cash flow. When that debt came due, scale alone wasn't enough to save it. Here's the structural observation, because that's the real point of both stories. Neither company failed because nobody wanted to buy a gym membership. They failed because the math connecting fixed costs, rent, debt service, equipment financing, to reliable revenue broke down A gym with thousands of members and a full parking lot can still be one bad debt structure away from insolvency. The crowd on the floor tells you nothing about whether the financial structure underneath can hold. So, how does a gym actually make money? In plain mechanical terms, the core engine is simple: monthly dues times number of members minus fixed costs. Say your fixed monthly operating costs come to $10,000. Rent, payroll, equipment payments, utilities, insurance, software. If you charge $50 a month per member, you need 200 paying members just to break even. Below that number, you lose money every single month. Above it, each additional member is close to pure profit. Because remember, the marginal cost of an inactive member is almost nothing. That's the good news. Here's the volatility that arrives right behind it. New gyms do not hit break even on day one. It typically takes 12 to 30 months of accumulating members before a facility crosses into profitability. And every one of those months burns through the working capital you set aside before opening. If your pre-opening sales push is weak, or a competitor opens 2 miles away during that window, your runway can run out before the gym ever turns a profit. And membership is not a stable, permanently growing number. Industry average monthly churn runs 7 to 10%. A well-run gym targets 3 to 5%. Run that at 8% on a 500 member base, and you're losing 40 members every single month. That means you have to sell 40 new memberships a month just to stay exactly where you started. That's not growth, that's running in place. Annual churn across the industry lands somewhere between 30 and 50%, which means a gym with 1,000 members can lose 300 to 500 people in a year and has to replace every one of them just to hold steady. Here's the flip side, and it's genuinely powerful. Research consistently shows that reducing churn by even 5 percentage points can increase profits by anywhere from 25 to 95%, depending on where you started. Retention isn't a soft metric in this business. It's the highest leverage number you have, which is why the second revenue stream matters so much. Personal training. A trainer working one-on-one can only train so many people. There's a hard ceiling built into the hours in a day. You cannot scale a single coach past a certain number of sessions per week without destroying them. The way around that ceiling is training multiple people at once. A coach running a semi-private session with 4 clients, each paying less than they would for private coaching, brings in significantly more per hour than one-on-one work. This is exactly why so many gyms have shifted towards small group training formats. It breaks the one trainer, 1 hour, 1 client ceiling. Of course, you don't keep all of it. Trainers on payroll typically take a commission of 30 to 50% of what they generate. Still, across a full roster, training tends to be far more profitable per hour than a basic membership ever could be. One dedicated training client can be worth dozens of members who barely use their card, and there are quieter revenue streams most first-time owners overlook entirely. Retail, supplements, branded apparel, shaker bottles, a small smoothie bar. That can add $20,000 to $60,000 a year at 40 to 60% margins as long as you keep the inventory lean. Renting space during off-peak hours to massage therapists, physiotherapists, or chiropractors. $500 to $1,500 a month per practitioner with almost no cost to you. Corporate partnerships with local employers. Group enrollment at a modest discount, which delivers predictable, unusually low churn revenue. Now let's put all of it together and look at what a full year actually looks like. Because this is where 2 very different versions of this business appear. In the optimistic scenario, you picked the right neighborhood, hit your break-even membership count on schedule, kept churn at the low end of normal, and built a real personal training program alongside your base. Under those conditions, a mid-sized independent gym can generate somewhere between $500,000 and $1.5 million a year in revenue at a net profit margin of 10 to 20%. That translates to an owner take-home somewhere in the range of $70,000 to $180,000 a year. Genuinely solid for the capital and work involved. Boutique studios can push higher, 20 to 35% margins, because of premium pricing on a smaller footprint. Now, the realistic scenario, 2 or 3 things go wrong. Not exotic disasters, just the normal risks of this exact business. Churn runs at the high end instead of the low end. A budget chain opens 2 miles away and pulls your price-sensitive members with a cheaper monthly rate. Equipment starts needing repairs more often than budgeted, adding another $1,000 to $3,000 a month to overhead. Under those conditions, that same gym slides from a comfortable double-digit margin into a single-digit margin, or into an outright loss during a slow season, even while the parking lot outside still looks reasonably full most evenings. The gap between those 2 outcomes in a single mid-sized gym can be well over $100,000 in 1 year, and almost none of that swing shows up as a dramatic visible event, no fire, no scandal. Just a slightly higher cancellation rate, a slightly slower membership ramp, and a slightly heavier repair bill, compounding quietly month after month, until the number at the bottom of the spreadsheet looks nothing like the plan you started with. Here's the survival statistic worth sitting with. Roughly 81% of small businesses survive their first year. By year 5, that drops to around 60%. Gyms are not an exception to that curve. They're a particularly capital-intensive version of it. So if you're going to open a gym, remember the thing that actually determines whether you make it. It was never about how many people you can convince to sign up. It's about how well your business survives on the people who stop showing up. Because in this industry, those are the people quietly paying for everything.